Welcome, everybody. Happy May Day. My name is David Griscom, and y'all are watching the Jacobin Show. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and brother, Matt Leck. How you doing?
I'm doing good, David. Good to be here with you live on International Workers' Day.
Really excited to be doing this and being able to do it live. That means we'll be able to do things a little bit differently to all the wonderful people in the audience. This is your day on the Jacobin Show and all over the world, so we're going to be really excited to be able to take your questions. We are doing a May Day special here at Jacobin. There are links for y'all to be able to get really incredible deal on Jacobin magazine, both digital and the print version. You can get it for $1 in digital and $10 for print subscriptions. We have this link. Let's see if we can put it up for everybody real quick. If you use the code Mayday2026X, you'll be able to get that. You can also find direct links on social media. We're going to be joined by many wonderful guests from Jacobin and from all across the great country. Really looking forward to having these conversations and being able to celebrate with all of y'all. Before we get into bringing on some of our guests today, I did want to take a second and kind of remind everybody about what this day is and why it's so important. May Day is our day. May Day is the day of the working class, and I figured it would be a great way to start by looking at some words from one of the great American socialist leaders, Eugene Debs. This is a speech that Eugene Debs gave when he was in prison. Let me start it off here. Eugene Debs. On this May Day, let us stand upright and be counted. We need to be united. We need to get together. We need to feel the common touch. The world will always be against us if we are not for ourselves. You who produce everything, you who really create, you who are conserving civilization, how can you endure to think that you are the bottom class, the lower order? When you go for a job to the master class, you work upon conditions which they prescribe. You depend upon them for the tools, you work for their benefit. But now, look into the eyes of your brother and see the new light that is shining there. We have endured. We have been oppressed. We have suffered. Now let us unite and stand together against capitalism. Let us unite industrially. Let us establish the service qualification for industry. What they call, quote, the dictatorship of the proletariat simply means no work, no vote. Unless one serves society, he cannot enjoy the protection and comfort of society. Let us working men establish the absolute rule that since labor creates all wealth, all good things of right belong to those whose labor has produced them. The doors of the prison may clang shut upon our bodies, but they cannot imprison our souls. A few of us may fall, a few of us may die, but the great movement goes gloriously on. It cannot be long now before it shall triumph. Our emancipation, the emancipation from the power of the ruling class, cannot long now be delayed. On, comrades, with renewed resolution, with courage, mounting ever higher. We are right, and the right will win. Really wonderful words there from Eugene Debs, somebody whose work I have taken tremendous guidance from throughout my life, and somebody who I'm thinking about celebrating in addition to all the comrades who have come before us and all the people in the fights today. Just a quick programming note, we're going to be taking questions from the chat throughout. We're going to have a lot of guests, so get those questions in. We'll try to get to as many as we can as we bring in multiple guests throughout the program. We're going to be joined in just a little bit by Micah Uetricht, the editor of Jacobin. But before that, I think we have a very special guest from the Philadelphia Whole Foods Union here. Let's see if we can bring on our guest, Edward Dupree. This is Edward Dupree, our friend here, who is a leader of the Philly Whole Foods Union. He's a 9-year employee of Whole Foods. Ed, thank you so much for joining us here on the Jacobin Show.
Look, I appreciate y'all having me on, man. Every time I talk to y'all, it's really great.
Well, I mean, we're always happy to talk to you, but especially on a day like today, on May Day. You know, can you talk a little bit about the work that you have been doing, what y'all have been up against, and what y'all have been able to achieve with this really historic and such an important movement that y'all are leading in Philly?
Yeah, man, it's tough. It's a lot. I mean, I think the everyday organizing is something that is often overlooked, but just trying to find ways to instill power in regular people has been really like enriching and encouraging, helping your coworkers, so many people that I've known for a long time, and then you constantly bringing in new folks. But yeah, in terms of what we're doing now, we are trying to maintain our unit. We are actually been making a contract through our bargaining committee through the past few months, and obviously the companies like not meeting us to bargain. There's a lot of weird legal loopholes that they can kind of abuse that you kind of see with the folks up at ALU, and they're trying to pretty much play through the same playbook. But yeah, I mean, we're doing that. We're talking to several stores across the country, just trying to get folks in a position to add more density, because I think that's one of the things that brings more tangibility to our union. It's like a lot of people can try and discount one store or one location, but as you see other people organize around, it becomes a lot more powerful. And a lot of people are not only like counting on us, but yeah, it's like it's really empowering. It's really empowering.
Well, I mean, could you talk about this a little bit? Because we've interviewed you before on Left Reckoning, and people should definitely, follow the work of the union here. But y'all have gone through, successes and also a lot of difficulty in dealing with a company like the company that you're dealing with. I mean, could you talk a little bit about your experience, both as a kind of a labor leader and as a worker yourself? Talk a little bit about this community of people, because I feel like you're probably having to rely on each other as you're kind of upholding this fight right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, it's funny. I want to say the kind of day-to-day things that occur, whether it's like noticing someone's being harassed at work, or, one of the things they like to do is kind of like separate people. You see a lot of favoritism being played throughout the store now that never was like, I wouldn't say it wasn't there, but it wasn't as overt. But I think it's going out with your coworkers, it's standing up for one another and just being a good coworker. I think that is like kind of really overlooked when it comes to organizing, and just showing up for people and letting people know that you genuinely care. And it's doing that kind of stuff, the normal stuff, and then it's going out. We've gone out to other locations and talked to people. We help people build their organizing committees, and it's also cool because we're talking to folks that are not even in Whole Food stores. They're in Amazon warehouses, they're in like smaller shops. So I think it's the kind of stuff that I want to say puts you in a position to where you build community. And I think that is the kind of really important work that we've been able to do so far. Hope that's a good answer.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, how did you, for folks maybe wondering, should I start organizing my workplace? How did you know, like, how to orientate yourself when you embarked upon this?
So we had like a really small campaign that kind of popped off and kind of petered out during the pandemic. So like a lot of that I kind of picked up from that, and it was like a small local group that kind of taught people the basics of organizing. And not only that, but when we first started, like for this campaign moving forward, we talked to some folks in EWOC, and not only that, but just like reading.
Could you remind people
texts
what
and,
EWOC is, just really quick? I
Oh,
think
it's
important, yeah.
the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. I always mess that mess that one up, but they're a great group of people who kind of help folks get the ground level of organizing, whether it's like one-on-one conversations, it's understanding how to like assess and map out a store and stuff. So it's I want to say that's how we kind of got comfortable with the idea of organizing, because it's, I don't know, it kind of seems really daunting, but it's really just getting to know people and understanding what their issues are. And yeah, I think those are like the main ways I got into it.
I mean, as much as you're kind of, able to divulge, I mean, where are y'all at in this process right now? And also, I mean, I want to ask you, I mean, the company you're going up against is not just, Whole Foods, right? This is a company that is engaged in many aspects of our life. And could you just talk about, that experience of, coming up against a company that, again, not only runs, the store that you work at, but also, does a lot of web services, is obviously, a major, logistics company. I mean, could you just talk about that experience of taking on a force like Amazon?
Yeah, man, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I was gonna say like, you really do think like, okay, we're a small store, but when you start to talk to other people in other locations, like I mentioned before, we know ALU. Um, we had like the privilege to meet these folks. It's like a international union organization called UNI, and you just learn about how they just go across the world and just don't give a fuck about labor laws, about any of that stuff. It's
Hmm.
really bizarre, but it's also encouraging because you kind of see that you're not alone. And in terms of like where we're at, I mean, we're building a contract. We're talking to other stores. Locally, after our election, which was last January, we won. We were certified locally through the local NLRB, which is like regional level, but the company is like pretty much taking it to the national level or the
Hmm.
federal level. And because of the kind of cronies in the NLRB that Trump has, but also like the firing, I think of Gwen Wilcox, which has had some really odd, I want to say, results. It's kind of gummed things up. So we're still waiting for like the federal recognition, but we have regional recognition. So there are ways that we've been acting in terms of like pursuing unfair labor practices and just gathering community support. Philly's one of those places where like it, I mean, a lot of places say it's a union town, but Philly really has a really rich and deep history in labor organizing, and people show up. So it's building those local connections that will help us support the store in the long run, while like building a more national campaign, and that's kind of where we are right now.
And for people just joining us, this is Edward Dupree, who is a leader with the Philly Whole Foods Workers Union. Ed, could you, in the last few minutes, I kind of wanted to ask about your experience, not only founding a union, but, now being a union member. I mean, what does that mean to you specifically, as being a part of a union now?
I think for me, it means like I'm not alone. And I think that is one thing that people often feel with the natural like alienation that you kind of get through the work that you do. Even when you're in a workplace with a bunch of people, you see that you care about your coworkers and that you have power with your coworkers. And that's kind of been the really wonderful thing, is that like when I show up for people, they understand why I show up for them. And it kind of reinforces that aspect of what a union is. It shows power, it builds power. And I think being a union member, at least in this day and age, I mean, for me, it's really necessary. And, it's something that I really enjoy talking to people about, especially folks who aren't in one, because is while we're still like working towards a contract and getting that real
Hmm.
tangible power, you see the kind of everyday ways in which just the fear of a union, like they people will talk to me and some other folks who are very prominent, and just because they had a conversation with us, things change. Like, like they like our leadership will bend over backwards to like accommodate people. So it's the fear of that collective power that kind of I don't know, it's really good, and it's something that I think everyone deserves to feel and understand, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm curious, in the last couple of minutes before we let you go here, friend, if you could kind of talk about this, because obviously, the goal right now is to win the contract and to get things in writing, certain kind of protections. But, could you talk about that experience of, being able to kind of stand up for yourself or for your coworkers in the ways that you've been able to do just, in this process right now that you probably would not have been as confident or capable of doing, as an individual beforehand?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like for example, one of the guys in my department will get a write up or something,
Mm-hmm.
and me, luckily, you know, I work in produce, so we have a lot of supporters there. So if there's an issue, like we get together and we talk about it. Once they start seeing people congregating and having conversations and getting a little too rowdy, you know, they get freaked out, and it's yeah, it's really dope when you see people come together, and it's really encouraging. I think those things, and then when we have like events outside the store, a lot of people show up and they, you know, give their support. And yeah, it doesn't I want to say make you feel like you're alone in a way where it used to. Like if I had an issue, I could talk to management and they just be like, oh well, okay, you know what I mean? But if people come to you in a group, you know what I mean? Then it's like, oh shit. Now it's gonna be on Instagram, and now they're gonna be talking about X, Y, and Z. So yeah. It's not. It's I want to say it's like that. The feeling of knowing people have your back. I think that's yeah. It's that kind of stuff. Hope that's a good answer.
One just quick thing, you know, talk about the interpersonal skills that are needed for this sort of endeavor, and like, you know, what maybe you had naturally and how you've developed and your fellow organizers have developed over this several years.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. Like, you know, I've been with the company for almost a decade now, so I've known so many people, and people know that I'm like reliable. I'm, you know, relatively friendly. I know I may have like a mean mug on if you see me in you know, in the streets, but I'm actually very, you know, personable. So it's being able to just have a conversation and listen to people. That's like, you know, that's a big rule you'll hear in organizing. It's the 80-20 rule. It's like you listen 80% of the time and 20% of the time you know, you respond and talk. So it's being able to lend an ear. It's being able to let people know that you know, they're not alone in the issues that they feel. And I think just being able to connect with people, have conversations, hang out. Like, you know, Philly's a great I'm sorry, I'm seeing these Jones in like real time.
Oh yeah, no worries.
But being in Philly, like one of my things is like food, and I love to connect with people through food. And it's like some of my coworkers would go out, we get grub, you know, we talk about work, we talk about life, you know, you get to know people. And I think it's those really simple interpersonal skills of just getting to know folks and being chill. That's the important part. You know, we can go on about Marx, but just getting to know people is the most important aspect of it, you know.
I think being social is an important part of you know, being a democratic socialist. I will just ask you, I mean, I know we've been sort of talking about this, but if you maybe want to make this pitch here to Adams, who asked, you know, what is it, you know, about, you know, being union that has kind of improved your working conditions, or any kind of, you know, victories that you can note now? You've talked about like the confidence and the capacity to kind of call things out, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, for one of the things that happened, so we have like wine garden rights, you know, so if you get a write up, you can have someone you know, assist you and be with you to have a, you know, I guess be like a witness for you. But in terms of working conditions that are material, like we actually got $1 raise for all new employees. When we first had our election, starting employees were like paid $16 an hour, like 16.20 or something. Now they're paid like $17 an hour. So there was like $1 raise. They did kind of give like a BS little 2% raise to people that were over like the starting raise. But that kind of stuff. One of the most intense departments is the ecom department, and they actually like I want to say lessened a lot of the intensity of it, because they have rates much like you'll find in Amazon warehouse. So you'll go into a Whole Foods, you'll see people shopping in these specialized carts, and they're packing orders as they go. And you know, they actually like were very lenient, you know, and made it to where they were so afraid to push people because people learned about those rates that yeah, they kind of laid off people and not like fire them, but like let people relax a bit. It's not as scary. It's not as you know, intense in that department as it used to be. Whereas like if you weren't under a rate, they pull you aside. That's a quick write up. You know what I mean? Now they have to go over this process and talk to you several times and be really nice about it. So yeah, it's kind of stuff that you overlook, but I think those are like some really important material gains that we've been able to get just because the company was afraid of just the idea of a union, and we still won and got the raise and all the things that they said we weren't going to get. So yeah.
Well, everybody, this is Edward Dupree, who is one of the organizers and leaders with the Philly Whole Foods Workers Union. They've done amazing and historic work. And Ed, happy May Day. And, the work that you do really is an inspiration to all of us. So thank you for coming on and for what you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great day and happy May Day.
Happy May Day, brother. Well, folks, we got a lot of show here. Oh, let's take him off here. We're going to bring on Micah in just a second, but I want to remind folks, this is May Day. This is your day. And to celebrate it here at Jacobin, we are offering a really incredible deal to subscribe to the magazine. You can get $1 digital subscriptions. Yes, you heard me right. $1, $10 for a print subscription. I highly suggest that you do it. We have the code here, I believe, is May Day 2026X. There's a link in the show notes for all of y'all to be able to get it. And I'll just say this. Jacobin has been such an important resource for the left in this country. There has been a left in the U.S. for a very, very long time. But in recent decades, we haven't been as strong as we needed to be. And Jacobin has played a huge role, I think, in kind of bringing people into a democratic socialist position. And many of these people who we talk to, politicians, labor leaders, myself, Matt, we all can kind of trace Jacobin as a major part of our origin story. So continue to support Jacobin because it's an important institution, but also because it's a really damn good magazine. I really have been enjoying the new edition of Teen Jacobin and all of the editions that have come out in recent years. It's a tremendous resource. And, if there's ever something that you're interested in studying or learning about, Jacobin is an incredible resource. If there's a question that you have or historical moment that you've been thinking about or studying or researching, chances are that there's a really great Jacobin article for you to go and find. Go ahead,
it's
Matt.
amazing. I remember sharing Jacobin articles when I was still using Facebook during the Obama administration. Which feels anachronistic, but it's been around for a while. It's been great to see. And also, folks, if you never had a Jacobin magazine, substantial, publication you got there, they're heavy. You can stop a door with those.
I don't mean to, to say anything about any other left-wing magazines, but yeah, you're getting a real hefty, pretty magazine. You're not just getting a little printout like you may get from other places. But let's bring on our next guest, our friend, Micah Uetricht, who is the editor at Jacobin. Micah, thank you so much for joining us on the Jacobin Show.
Very happy to be here. Happy May Day, boys.
Happy May Day, my friend. I hope you've been able to celebrate a little bit. And, this be really fun to be able to have everybody, here and celebrate. I mean, could you talk a little bit about this most recent issue? Teen Jacobin's been a lot of fun for people who haven't picked it up. What are some things that they've been missing?
Yeah, there's a long history about the term Teen Jacobin was sort of like a Twitter meme that kind of went a little out of control for a minute. A little broke containment several years ago, but now it's we've as with any wise institution, you bring somebody takes an idea like Teen Jacobin, goes a little too far with it. You got to bring those people into the fold, absorb them into the institution. So we brought the teens on board, and it's a fantastic issue. It's got great profile of Sarah Sherman by Meagan, an interview with Hassan Piker. I did not know what a great time to be living in. I learned from the print issue that we've got a SNL cast member who was one of the top canvassers repeatedly, week after week, for Bernie Sanders in Los Angeles in 2020. This is something that I learned from reading our newest issue. So it's a great issue, like every issue of the magazine. Frankly, I'm a little bit biased, but every time I open one up after we've put it out, I'm just really blown away that we've got such a high quality print magazine, one that is really a gorgeous thing to behold. It's worth subscribing. If you don't even have to crack it open and read it, just have it be a coffee table item. It's worth your $10 print subscription for this May Day just to get the coffee table item piece of it alone.
And look, I know, again, people, we have this code Mayday 2026X to get $1 digital subscriptions and $10 print magazine subscriptions. And I'll just remind folks, I mean, Jacobin is wide. I might have told you this, Micah, but I'll just say this on air because it really made me happy. I was in Valentine, Texas, which is population, I think, like 34. And I was invited to somebody's place. We were hanging out after a long evening, and I walk into their house, and right there on the coffee table was the newest edition of Jacobin. So it's not just in the Brooklyn corridor; it's all over this great country. Micah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about New York City, though. Let's talk about Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Maybe to keep on theme, I want to share this image that we have here that is as good of an endorsement as any. This is Zoran Mamdani holding up one of the most recent issues of Jacobin. And I believe we have the photographer here, right, Mike?
It's correct, yes. I wish there was video of me. If you're trying to get anything out of Zoran these days, you really got to like move fast and deal with like a scrum of people around him. So I was like backpedaling, doing a sprint backwards, trying to get this photo of him. That was after the Claire Valdez endorsement in January when he endorsed Claire, who's running for Congress in New York, a great socialist and trade unionist who's running for Congress, who I know you're aware of and your listeners and viewers probably aware of too. And he was there, of course, to endorse Claire. And, we've had a relationship with him for a long time. Several years, I think before he even won his first race for state assembly, we were doing interviews with him, kept in close touch with him over the years, and it's the biggest electoral breakthrough in a very long time in the U.S. For the socialist movement, his election as mayor. So we're watching it very closely, and it's been really thrilling to see. I would say for me on a personal level, just a sort of like validation of a life's work up to this point. I mean, if you're on the left for a long time, especially sort of like pre-Bernie Sanders, as I have been, you're kind of doing this work like on the faith. It's a leap of faith, right? Like you're not really sure if this whole socialism thing, it's the right thing to do, but does it actually have a mass purchase? Can it actually break through on a mass level? And obviously we learned that from the Bernie campaigns, but then we really saw the potential for it with Zoran's victory. So it's a great time to be a socialist right now in New York City, but really anywhere. Yeah.
I mean, it's been notable even here in Texas. I mean, one of the first things that people want to talk to me about when I tell them, that I do stuff with Jacobin or that I'm a democratic socialist, the first thing they want to talk to me about is Zoran, because people are really excited about seeing that politics is something that can actually improve their lives.
Right.
I want to remind people in the audience, by the way, that we are taking questions. So if there's anybody here who has a question for Matt, myself, or Micah, we're very happy to take them. But while those chats get kind of loaded up, Micah, I wanted to just ask you, I mean, why does this victory mean so much? I mean, Zoran really has shown that not only can this kind of politics win, but I think it's a huge boost. One, I mean, certainly to like New York City, DSA, and politics in that part of the country, but I think nationally as well for democratic socialism. I mean, could you talk about what this victory really means? And maybe, Matt, if you're ready, we can have that clip after to play.
Yeah, I mean, there are many ways you could respond to this question. I mean, one, Zoran himself obviously is a kind of like has world historic riz, right? Like everybody understands that this is a really unique character in himself.
Which
but
is
Zoran,
a Marxist concept, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I forget which volume of Capital that's in. But Zoran himself would tell you that he is the product of the socialist movement in New York City and across the country. He was, a cadre member of New York City Democratic Socialists of America, and it's the socialist movement that really shaped him. He had other political background, of course, but like he really is somebody who comes out of this movement and comes out of a chapter in New York City specifically that has built an electoral machine that was building up to this point over the years. If you listen to my interview with Tasha Van Auken, for The Dig, one of the Jacobin podcasts. We went deep on her own history. She was his field director during the campaign and is now the head of the Office of Mass Engagement in the mayor's office. She goes through the whole history of DSA, New York City DSA electoral campaigns, and the way that people really smartly built up these campaigns over time, built their capacity. And I think when people outside of New York City hear about this, they think, well, I don't know if we could do that. We're that's New York City. New York is a very specific, obviously it's a specific place, but the core nuts and bolts of this campaign, there's no reason why it can't be built elsewhere. I mean, someone like Tasha Van Auken and the other electoral organizers around her, they just did smart organizing. They had a bunch of volunteer organizers who were serious about building a real political movement in the city, and they did so. And the other aspect of his campaigning and now his mayoralty, another thing that I do not think has to be limited to New York City. I mean, the guy ran on a kind of economic populism that is a great, you can run on this basically anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have to tweak it for where you are in your specific conditions of your whatever your local area is. But the basics about being laser focused on affordability, on the key issues that working class people are facing, and talking about how the mainstream Democratic Party has not delivered on those key issues that affect people's lives so greatly. There's no reason that can't be replicated elsewhere. So I think both for what Zoran is doing in New York and the movement that has been built around him, and the potential for where this can go is extremely exciting for New Yorkers. But it's also something that people outside of New York should pay close attention to, because you could do it in your city, in your state, on the national level even as well.
And we have this clip here. I will just know one thing. He's not the first person to do this, but I do think one thing that was really exciting about his campaign was not only how joyful and fun it was, but and I might be loath, to say this as a non-New Yorker, but it was a very pro New York City, campaign. I mean, it was fun. He had a lot of pride in where he's coming from and who he's wanting to represent, which I just think is a good value for democratic socialists to have. I mean, we believe in the people, the places that we live in; those are made up of the people. Matt, if you have, why don't we play this here, because I think this is a really good clip.
What I find is that New Yorkers ask me less about how I describe my politics and more about whether my politics includes them. And I think what we can see is that a democratic socialist politics is one that should be judged on its delivery, like any ideology. And what we're showing in this city is we can pursue the big things like universal child care and do the pothole politics at the same time that we're showing, and not just filling in the potholes, changing the catch basins, but also repaving over 1,000 miles of roadway.
But Mr. Mayor, presidential and statewide elections are often decided in battleground regions that do not look like New York City.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Before I was the mayor, I was an assembly member of Astoria in Long Island City. At that time, I was told that you could only be a democratic socialist in Northwest Queens. Then I became the mayor. Now the next question is the state. Then the next question will be the country. I think that this is a politics that can flourish anywhere because, frankly, there is only one majority in this country. That's the working class. And it's time we have a politics that puts them at the heart of what it is that we're pursuing and not as part of the appendix.
Yeah, I mean, could you talk about that message there? I mean, I think, it hits, I think, for a general audience, but I think also for a democratic socialist audience as well about what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should watch these interviews that Zoran does for real lessons in communication and discipline, staying on message, how to communicate clearly. He does this, there's nobody better in terms of that kind of discipline and clarity. And also, if you notice what he does there, the host is essentially trying to get him into some kind of debate about the term socialism. People aren't going to go for this kind of thing. They're scared of you. And he brings it back to pothole politics, which has been one of his principal pitches since he's taken office. It's we what it means for him to be a socialist is not to try to lead a class on Marxist ideology for the people of New York City, all 8 million of them. It's to say what it means for me to be a socialist is that I'm going to deliver the goods that you need to survive and thrive as a human being, which you deserve. We're going to fill the potholes. We're going to, the things that are making your life difficult, we are going to change them. That is what it means to be a socialist. You're suffering under crushing costs of rent. We're going to bring the rent down. The groceries are too high. We are going to use a kind of public option for grocery stores to help bring this down. We are going to use the government to help you and not to screw you. And that, again, is a message that you can take to any corner of this country. And of course, you're going to encounter some people who just are like, raving anti-communists. They don't like the term socialist and they're never going to vote for you. But the majority of the people are open to this pitch that this guy is a socialist. And what that means is he's going to use government to help you rather than hurt you. There's a lot of runway left for like throughout every corner of this country. We can take that message to them and we can win elections and build a broad movement that can rebuild socialism in this country and actually make socialism a relevant and tangible ideology for people in this country.
Well, I mean, obviously, Micah, you are the editor of the largest socialist magazine in the United States. And someone could maybe hear the message that you're saying here is like kind of like, oh, downplay, don't talk about the socialism. I mean, where is like the role of that kind of political education or that general education about what democratic socialism is, right? Because I think not to set you up too much, but like I do think one thing that Zoran has done a good job of is like making socialism like a kind of practical, tangible thing, while also not running away from the word. Like he still calls himself a socialist. But I mean, could you talk about like, if what we're saying right now is like he's so great because he doesn't focus on, giving lectures about Marxist economics to the public. I mean, then, where is that kind of role in our political movement? Like who should be filling it? How should we be filling it? How important is it?
Well, I don't know if you heard, David, that we've got a great sale today at Jacobin Magazine. So if you want some good Marxist political education, don't look to the mayor, look to Jacobin Magazine, jacobin.com, get your subscription. I mean, it's not true to say that Zoran runs from that kind of thing. And I don't mean to be implying that. I mean, if you watch the videos that he has put out of his office lately, I mean, he's often talking about political history, figures that he, draws inspiration from. He certainly talked about this on the campaign trail, talking about American socialist history. He brings up all the time the Milwaukee Sewer Socialist Party that had a huge presence in Wisconsin, for example. I would be the last person to say that we should not talk about the finer points of Marxist political education and socialist ideology, but it has to be not something that is sort of done for its own sake and a sort of like intellectual enterprise. It has to be tied to, delivering real tangible gains for average people, because of course that is what fundamentally socialism is all about. It is about building a world where the working class, who constitute the vast majority of this country and of this planet, are actually able to thrive. And also, of course, that like the working class themselves are not just passive recipients of these things, but are actually agents of bringing about change in their own lives and bringing about change in the rest of the world. That's like central to the socialist pitch. And that you've heard those kind of things from Zoran during his time, the couple of months that he has been mayor.
Matt, if we go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. What do you?
No, you please.
I was just saying, do you think there's a meaningful contrast to when Bernie ran in 2020? He gave a speech about democratic socialism, and a lot of people like us were really happy to hear him do it because we like to hear what we believe in validated by a leading politician. But it didn't really do much for him, right? Like, do you think that's a meaningful contrast to draw, or do you just think we're at basically a new stage of this struggle for socialism?
I mean, I think that people are generally open to the idea of socialism when they see people like Bernie and Zoran calling themselves socialists. They think that the program that they're pitching is one that is one that sounds pretty good to their lives. They're not happy with the status quo, with the way that politicians in either party have not delivered for average people. And so they're open to a pitch that calls itself socialism. I think that it's usually it's ultimately going to be the role of people like us to like, when they get in the door through someone like a Zoran or a Bernie and they're interested in this term, and then hopefully they find the Jacobin Show, they're on the Jacobin website or subscribing, or or joining DSA and joining a reading group and like learning more about the ideology. But I think that we're clearly in a moment when people are open to a term like socialism that has been anathema for so long in this country, because they're just like really tired of the status quo really not delivering for them, and so they hear they see someone like a Zoran making this pitch, and they're like, okay, well, clearly what we've been doing is not working, and all these people who I really don't like and who I associate with failure and not delivering on a better world are telling me that I should be afraid of socialism. So maybe there's something to this thing. If the people who I've grown to despise are telling me don't listen to these socialists, maybe I should be checking out what they've got on offer.
100%. And, I would just add in a quick plug. My book, The Myth of Red Texas, is 50% off today for May Day as well on OR Books. And I've been traveling across Texas, and we've been having these huge events, like 80, 90 people showing up. Obviously, a lot of DSA folks, but a lot of people who might have heard about, this book or this idea for the first time, and they're very curious about it. I think there's a lot of hunger and excitement, for a different kind of politics. And I think, not just Zoran, but, some of the exciting campaigns that we've seen. Dan Osborne, Taylor Ramett in Texas, and Graham Plattner have also shown that there's a lot of hunger all across the country, I think, for a different kind of politics. Now, not everybody calls himself a democratic socialist, but, kind of working class politics, kitchen table issues, that stuff's really popular. And I think the people, who run this country are really afraid of that message being pushed. I have a tough question for you here.
Let's hear it.
From the audience, who says, from Sally, says, Debs went to prison for opposing World War I and urging draft resistance. Yet in the labor movement today, which I'm a part of, this is the questioner, opposing genocide, militarism still feels like a fringe issue. Why?
Yeah, I mean, the labor movement. You say all the time on the show, we say all the time in the magazine, is really essential for rebuilding any kind of like serious working class progressive politics in this country, and that is related to how it can engage people at the point where they are spending the majority of their working hours at work, where they are generating profits for the capitalist system, which is what makes the whole thing hum. But that doesn't mean that, if you're, it's hard enough just to organize a union in this country. You're just talking to a previous guest about this. But as socialists, we also want to make unions into vehicles that can fight for something, not just for themselves, but beyond themselves, for the entire working class, right? And doing that means getting unions to oppose things like genocide and militarism. And that's not an easy sell for a lot of unions. Either unions who just don't touch a lot of those issues because they think they're divisive, or even sometimes they have leadership that's conservative, or even in some cases unions that have a stake in like militaristic industries and the war machine. Average working class people who are making the bombs and the planes and everything else in this country, and some of them have a stake in that. And so I think that you look at a union like the UAW, for example, the United Auto Workers. Like, this is a union that does have some members in those kind of military industries, and a union that has also a very strong progressive history. But in recent history, it was a union that kind of took a detour in sort of, it wasn't a super active union, had a lot of corruption at the top of it. And workers within that union led a reform movement that said that we need to be a different kind of UAW, which was about rooting out corruption, delivering for members, and they won the union election within that union. And then once they were able to do that, they were able to get their union to get out front of issues like the genocide in Gaza. The UAW was one of the first major unions to come out demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and opposing Israel's genocidal war in Gaza. So it's definitely a important issue for people to take up. But people should, first and foremost, they need to organize unions in their workplace with their coworkers, and then once they do that, then they can be like, and this institution of ours, this thing that we've just built, a union, has to be able to fight for bigger things for the rest of the working class, like opposing war. That's the sort of order of operations. We need to organize more unions, and then we can use those unions for bigger issues like opposing war and genocide.
100%. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I would just add, we talked to Jeff Shirky on this topic for Left Reckoning, and I think it's, I wouldn't want to draw too much of a reductive view of the past, right? Like we talked about with Shirky about the AFL-CIO taking out a full-page ad saying we support Israel in the 80s, and George Meany supported the Vietnam War, for instance. So this has always been, in fact, a really kind of an existential issue in within labor in this country.
100%. And part of the reason why people like George Meany were in power and taking these reactionary stances was because they had defeated more left-wing forces within the labor movement who were trying to push for a different vision of unionism. So that's an argument that, like, that's not like screw unions. It's like we need to be fighting within these unions to make them the vehicles for progressive change that we know they can be.
I think this is obviously what we're talking about with Zorn and some of these campaigns. There's a lot to be excited about. I mean, at the beginning of the show, we had Ed from the Philly Whole Foods Workers Union, which is a historic union really going up against, one of the largest companies on the planet. So there's a lot to be excited about, but we are also living at a time right now where, I mean, we're going into a war that is just so unpopular. We're seeing kind of democracy eroded before our eyes. I mean, Micah, how do you kind of balance these two things of, like, one, being kind of excited, but then also being very clear-eyed about, the state that we're in, because, union density is still much lower than it needs to be. So how do you kind of like weigh these things against each other, in your work and your personal life?
I mean, you're asking about my personal life. Well,
Well, we
personal,
can leave that out.
just like,
That's for
every
Jacobin
day, I'm
After
just
Dark.
like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what's happening here? There's no shortage of despair that me or anybody else on this video right now, or anyone who's watching this stream is there's no danger that people are probably too optimistic about the future at this point. I mean, I think everybody who's got half a brain cell at this point knows what we are up against. But like, despair is a really demobilizing feeling to have. If you feel that there is just no hope for the future, then like, why would you participate in fights to build a better future? And like, I feel a lot of despair when I see what the Trump, the past year and a half have been really difficult to live through. There have been times when I've been like, personally very scared about where things were going to go. But, less than a year and a half after Trump took office for the second time, I mean, we've got the wheels falling off of that administration in really important ways. Still out here doing a lot of damage and evil in the world, but they've lost that kind of confidence that they had, a year and a half ago. And while they're still in charge, like it really does feel like we're having a lot of breakthroughs in a lot of important places, not just around Graham Plattner in Maine, obviously, like the whole list of people who, all of your viewers are very well acquainted with. So it's very important for socialists to be sober about what's going on in the world and not think that like we're about to, just around the corner is like a utopian socialist future that we're all about to win. But there is, especially as somebody who's been on the left for a long time and like really was kind of clinging to this ideology through some really dark days. I mean, I find it objectively true to say that there are prospects for a left politics and like a livable, a politics can push for like a livable society and a livable planet. Yeah. They really are better than they have been at basically any other point in my lifetime. And that's something that gets me out of bed every morning to keep fighting.
Well, I know we have this clip here. I will just add to that. Alexander Coburn, somebody who's a huge influence on me, had this really funny bit that I'll try and paraphrase, that he would kind of walk by this newspaper salesman from one of the Trotskyist parties, and they would give this speech, and they would say, comrades, the capital has its boot on the neck of labor. Our enemies are in power. The war machine is ramping up. Join the Communist Party, and and he just is like, well, that's kind of a bleak pitch to people,
Right.
And I think that one thing that Jacobin has been really good at is being very clear-eyed, but also kind of noting where are these areas that you can get involved in, where the hope is, where the mobilization is. Because I think one of the kind of difficult historic tasks of socialists is to be able to be very clear-eyed about what we're up against and the dire situation that we're in, but also to be revolutionary, and to be optimistic. And I've always found that socialism, there's a form of socialism that I think is kind of pessimistic, right? It's just looking at all the horror and the pain and the suffering of the world, and they have a point. But socialism to me has always been an optimistic philosophy because it says, hey, look at all this horrible stuff. A better world is possible, and we hold on to that truth and promise of that better world. And maybe we could play this clip here, Max. I think it kind of does roll in very well with what we're talking about. This is Graham Plattner. This is him speaking to the building trades in D.C., right? I forget the official name, but yeah.
Who see strengthening labor as the core of their job. We must harness the full power of the federal government, not only to protect the rights that workers have fought so hard for, but to grow the power of organized labor in this country. We need to pass the PRO Act. We need to end right to work once and for all. We need to bust worker misclassification and break up corporate monopolies. We need to expand labor courts, strengthen apprenticeships, enforce Davis-Bacon, and add PLAs to every single dollar of federal spending.
Imagine never brushing your retainer again.
Whoa, Matt, what's this?
I would love to never brush my retainer again. That'd be great.
Micah, what do you think about that message there?
I mean, it's it speaks for itself. I mean, this is a guy who's he's up in front of the building trades unions. This is hardly a sort of like readout of, I don't know, like ultra woke liberal arts college educated guys, and you hear them like hooting and hollering for what he's talking about, and he's talking about using the power of the federal government and government at all levels to rebuild the labor movement and use policy to actually strengthen unions and remove the many barriers that exist in this country to workers being able to organize and from existing unions from being undercut by non-union labor. At a time when people's incomes have stagnated for so many years at this point, when the cost of rent is going up, of higher education, of healthcare, all the stuff that we know about, the bill of goods that we need in order to lead a decent life, the pitch about the labor movement is about changing that stuff and actually having enough resources in your life to be able to live with some dignity and be able to afford those basics. So it's a compelling pitch, and we need more Graham Plattners and Claire Valdez's and people who are running campaigns for elected office saying that one of the central things that they want to do in elected office is help rebuild the labor movement.
I think we have more of this clip here we can play, but I will just a quick programming note. This is Micah Uetricht, who is the editor of, excuse me, Jesus Christ, of Jacobin magazine. Let's play the rest of this clip though, Matt.
It's too expensive. It's going to stymie progress. And to that I say, bullshit. Guaranteeing dignity to working people is not some sideshow to policies. It must be central. Paying union workers a good wage to build our schools and our roads and our energy grids is the best possible way we could spend our money. Certainly better than giving tax breaks to billionaires or blowing up girls' schools in Iran.
And I think that kind of pushing back about that how you're going to pay for it strategy is also a message that I think is very influential for folks, because we do hear about cost all the time in American politics, and yet never for the killing machines.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a, succinct version of like what the pitch should be in basically any race from the presidential runs to dog catcher, I mean, there it is. We should be using the immense wealth that our society, the richest society in all of human history, has generated to meet human needs, to pave roads, to build schools, to give people the stuff they need, rather than bombing girls' schools in Iran, or dropping bombs on anyone, giving bombs to Israel to commit genocide against Palestinians. I mean, this is the core of the message that I think that you can take to anywhere in this country right now. Money for human need, not for eviscerating and destroying human life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it is exciting, and I also think that there is an opportunity when it comes to labor. And I'm curious, your thoughts on this, Micah. Both in New York and everywhere. I mean, for a long time, I mean, Jacobin has been covering this a lot. The kind of de-alignment, let's say, of working class voters away from the Democratic Party. And one thing that I'll note, and just like from my experience, my limited experience, kind of doing political work here in Texas, for a long time, in the same way that the Democratic Party has kind of treated, like, let's say, Hispanic voters or Black voters as just like automatic parts of their bloc, they have treated labor as automatic parts of their bloc. And one thing that we have seen over the past few years from folks like Sean Fain, from exciting work within the IBEW, even with the building trades here, is that labor has been throwing their weight around a little bit more. And I think that it creates an opportunity for kind of democratic socialist politics to say, like, hey, it seems like the Democratic Party hasn't been fighting for you. I mean, a lot of the things that Graham is talking about right there is kind of just returning to a former system of kind of labor relations in this country, like laws that are on the books that aren't being enforced, or laws that have been kind of chipped away. I mean, could you talk about this opportunity that like our politics may have, and kind of, fighting for labor in a way that is kind of beneficial in getting more democratic socialists elected as actual champions of working class people?
Yeah, I mean, times are extremely bleak for the labor movement. We recently republished an essay in Jacobin by our columnist Chris Brooks, who's raising the real possibility that labor could be reaching a kind of event horizon moment within our lifetimes, where like the numbers are going to keep going down, and we're not even sure that labor would be able to come back from that if the unionization rates continue to tank the way that they are. So it's important to be quite sober about that. But on the other hand, we also know that unions are more popular than they have been in decades in this country, that huge numbers, millions and millions of Americans say that they would like to join a union if they could. That's a moment that we have to be able to take advantage of, and make the kind of pitch that we were just discussing to people, and also like experiment with new ways of doing union organizing. The initiatives like the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee that has been around for a couple of years now, that connects people who have problems at work with folks who can help them strategize about how they can fix that and how they can organize with their coworkers. This stuff is really essential to be able to figure out how we are going to have a new labor movement for the 21st century. We've got levels of economic inequality and economic misery that are around the levels of the Gilded Age, and we need experimentation in new ways of organizing to reverse that kind of stuff. And people like Plattner, I mean, everything that Plattner just laid out is exactly the kind of thing that our left and progressive candidates should be talking about. Claire Valdez, who I've already mentioned, rolled out a very robust labor and union organizing platform in her campaign, which we wrote about in Jacobin. So I mean, in some ways, we've had more success with running these kind of left candidates for elected office in recent years than we have had in figuring out how to fix this problem of a dying labor movement. But when you've got those kind of candidates who are running for office and not just saying, I'm going to fix everything for you, but like, I'm going to work to figure out how we can rebuild the labor movement so you yourself, an average working class person, can make change in your own life, with your coworkers, where you live. I think both of those things need to be done at the same time. It's the only way that we're going to get out of this mess that we're in.
And I'm going to take a quick stab at this, and then I would love to hear your thoughts, Micah, because this is the question that everybody asks all the time, because it's something that I think is important. People are thinking about it a lot. Adams asks, is reforming the Democratic Party or replacing the Democratic Party the better path? And I'll just note, and I will shamelessly note, I write about this a lot in my book, The Myth of Red Texas, and I'm not just plugging it for no reason. It's because that was one of the main reasons that I wrote the book. So in Texas, at the end of the 19th century, you have a very similar moment to the moment that we're experiencing today. You have an unorganized working class. You also have tremendous amounts of debt and this new capitalist class rising and putting in a lot of protections for themselves at the expense of everyday and working class people. In Texas, they organized themselves into kind of economic organizations, the Southern Farmers Alliance, which starts advocating for farmers on a mass scale. And from that movement, they then are able to ask themselves the question, should we influence the Democratic Party, which was ruling Texas at the time, or run as our own party? And, you know, they kind of do both. So at the very beginning of the 1890s, they're able to get tremendous victories by being a pressure block on the Democratic Party. Eventually, that path gets kind of shut out to them, and they launch the People's Party, which becomes the second major party in Texas. Later, the Socialist Party and the Texas Socialist Party itself, you know, goes through the same question, where they're operating as an independent party, independent from the Democratic Party, and they're able to get some victories through that, but they are also very much shut out of politics. And in the Texas experience, and throughout the labor movement, the socialist movement, and the progressive movement in this country, we see just different wins and losses for both strategies, right? Running as a Democrat, running as a member of a major party, or running as an independent. And I make this point that I think that sometimes, even though this is a question that I think about a lot, because I think it's a really important question, I think sometimes the way that we ask this question kind of distracts us from the real historical examples, because, you know, it's not like there's just like one quick trick. What ended up allowing these movements to be successful, and also what led some of these movements to fail, was how organized and mobilized the working class was. So, like, I'll note, like, to have the People's Party, to have the Populist Party, there was a group of people who considered themselves to be populist. When they said, we are the People's Party, people knew who the people were and who they weren't. And I think a lot of the work that we have to do right now is to try to articulate and build up movements of everyday working class people who can then engage in these strategic questions. I don't think that you can have an answer to the strategic question before you have that organization of people. But that's just my kind of response to that question, Micah. I'm very curious to hear if you have anything that you'd add or disagree with there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that we have covered quite closely in Jacobin over the years. And, you know, everybody is not happy that we are stuck with this situation where there are essentially only two parties in our current political system. This is a sort of structural reality. I would like to, you know, to live in a place where we could have a left party, a workers' party, like most other wealthy countries around the world have. But the truth is that we are stuck with a political system that is quite dysfunctional in many ways, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. And what we've seen in the last decade or so since Bernie's first run is that I think that the vast majority of the action, not all of it, but most of the action for the left is going to be waging fights within the Democratic Party. I mean, that's what Bernie Sanders did, despite, you know, never formally joining the Democratic Party himself. That is the play that, you know, that's how Zoran Mamdani won the mayoralty in this city, was running in the Democratic primary. I certainly would love within my lifetime to see us be able to break out of that two-party stranglehold. But I think that if that's ever going to happen, it is going to come through waging fights within the Democratic Party. And, you know, like in New York, we've got a mayor like Zoran who's backed up by the New York City DSA. And NYC DSA acts as a kind of like party-like organization in terms of like providing an analysis for people, you know, developing them ideologically, doing political education with them, you know, everything you can imagine, from like social clubs to like, collecting the data that's needed to run campaigns. Like, it functions as something like a party within the Democratic Party, and it has an ability to like discipline its candidates and come up with a rough joint program for its elected officials to be operating under. And I think the proof of like how effective and important that is in the fact that mainstream centrist corporate Democrats hate what we're doing. They really don't like seeing leftists operating within the party. I think right now, the way that Hassan Piker has become such a major political football for both centrist Democrats and the right, he's been gaining in popularity for a long time, but it wasn't until he started like really getting involved in some of these campaigns, like Abdul al-Sayed's. He's like actually, swinging, participating in contests within the Democratic Party that people are like really freaking out. This is why like Third Way really started going after him, right? Because they're like, oh no, this guy's like entering into the Democratic Party and is trying to like make his political analysis one that is dominant within the party, and we've got to do everything we can to stop him. So I think the kind of proof is in the pudding in terms of how the enemies of progress are mobilizing against socialists and progressives who are operating within the party. They would love nothing more than to see leftists not compete for these like Democratic primaries and just like leave that as a space for them and their like Wall Street and Silicon Valley backed candidates to just run the floor. So I think we have to keep we need like a strong organizational backing, with something like a party, making sure that people don't drift rightward or do the wrong thing. But the fight for the vast majority of the time is going to be within the Democratic Party for the near future. And hopefully, as I said, I would love to see that result in some kind of, change. We would need to see a lot of big changes in our politics in order to make this happen. But I would love nothing more than for us to, before my death, live to see a Labor Party or a left party in this country that actually run elections. That'd be great. But it's going to run through fights within the Democratic Party for the near future, for the most part.
This is Micah Uetricht, who is the editor at Jacobin. Really appreciate your time, friend. I'm going to put this up on screen for folks right now. And Micah, you can tell us a little bit more about this. Right now, Jacobin is running an incredible deal. $1 digital subscriptions, $10 print subscriptions using the code Mayday 2026. Micah, tell people why they should be subscribing to Jacobin.
I mean, $10, like, you're not going to find a better deal than this for a print subscription. You get.
We also have these great posters as well. Sorry, go ahead, Micah.
I mean, the really beautiful May Day posters that join the sort of like incredible, history of all around the world of beautiful May Day posters. I will say there are the obvious reasons you should get this. We're the best socialist magazine in America. It's a beautiful physical item for you to own in your home. Also, though, I think we may actually lose money on these $10 year-long subscriptions. So if you hate Jacobin,
I was
going to
say,
subscribe. You're going to be hurting us if you're subscribing at $10.
Well, Micah, we really appreciate you so much and all the work that you do here at Jacobin. Thank you so much for joining us on this May Day, and happy May Day, brother.
A real pleasure. Happy May Day to you both as well.
Well, folks, this is the Jacobin Show May Day stream, and we are really, really, really excited to bring in our next guest. We have our guest here, Matt, if you got him, Elise Joshi. Thank you so much for joining us over here on Jacobin. Well, Matt, you're quiet now too, so everybody.
Yeah, we might have had just an internet issue with Elise here. I'm going to tell her to rejoin here in a second.
Well, while she's doing that, I will remind folks, in addition to this really exciting, I could see her on the side getting ready to come in, and then the camera froze up. In addition to this really great deal that we're running here at Jacobin, I will remind folks at OR Books, we are also doing 50% off of the titles. You can get my book, The Myth of Red Texas. You can get the digital and the print version version of the book there as well. It's been really nice traveling the country. I'm going to be here in Austin next week at Alienated Majesty at 6 Central. I'm going to be joined by Justin Miller of the Texas Observer. So if you're in the Austin area and you haven't had an opportunity to come and pick up the book, ask me some questions and chat and hang out, please put that on your calendar. Yeah, and I think that we do now have Elise here.
Sorry. Hello. Can you hear
No
me?
worries. Hey, yes, we can. Everybody, this is Elise Joshi. Elise is somebody whose work I very much respect, and I've been following for years. It's such an honor to have you here on the Jacobin Show, my friend. And thank you so much for joining us on May Day.
Thank you. The honor is mine. Happy May Day.
Yeah, happy May Day. Well, look, I mean, people probably have seen, but you, along with others, have launched a very exciting new project with More Perfect Union. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's been just such an exciting last couple of weeks. I just got back in the Bay last night, but we were in DC launching our first event for More Perfect University with Bernie Sanders. Super grateful for their team. But yeah, More Perfect University is the first effort of More Perfect Union to open up our newsroom and extend the effort that we've been doing for 5 years of reaching audiences and talking about issues that corporate media refuses to, whether that's talking about Appalachian tenants organizing and winning unprecedented contracts, whether that's rural areas of Indiana fighting against AI data centers. More Perfect Union has been covering these issues relentlessly, and we believe that students and young people can do that as well, and we're going to train up an army of students to do that. And I've just been floored by the excitement from young people already about this program since launching, and yeah, happy to talk about it more, but I'm super stoked.
Yeah, Elise,
go ahead.
we had you on right as you were leaving your previous gig, which was Gen Z for Change, and I was very curious where you're going to end up after that. And very cool to hook up with More Perfect Union. I'm curious, you've been talking a little bit, emphasizing labor a little bit more in your work too. I'm just talking about like your shift in this, or how you've evolved, because your generation, even worse than millennials, the job market leaving college is atrocious. And I'm just curious, just to reflect on that side of it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm 23 years old, so I'm still a youngin' and I've got a lot to learn. And my generation has been completely screwed over by our economy, which has always been designed for billionaires and for the 1%. But it's more it's more apparent now than ever, and these same corporations are consolidating power in government and in like every single aspect of our lives. And this promise that especially college educated folks have had for decades, that if you attend a university, that you have a spot in this economy, that you can there's a ladder for you to enter the executive world, to enter a high paying job and make it in this country. And that promise, or that it's been apparent that this is a mirage of that promise of America, and young people are realizing it now more than ever, because we graduate, it's hard to find a job. So many young people are saddled with thousands of dollars in debt because college tuition costs more and more over the last few decades. And it's all happening at the same time as rising authoritarianism, accelerating climate crisis, and the realization among young people that like the reason we can't have, affordable college, free college, is the same reason why we're going to war with Iran, with Venezuela, and all over the world. And so these issues are tied to each other, and like this lucidity that young people have had is growing over the last decade or so, and it's really exciting to see. And it's really critical that we channel and harness that energy and not just assume that it's gonna, like, students are gonna rise up and everything's gonna be okay. I think it's really critical that like More Perfect University exists to show other young people that it's possible to to organize effectively on your campus and in your community, and not just, assume that it's all going to work out. But I'm rambling a little bit, but
No,
it's
well,
I'm really excited.
no, I mean, as am I, and I want to kind of, ask you, as this kind of project is developing. I mean, when like for myself, I was the first one in my family to go to college, and I remember, one is like already difficult enough to kind of traverse like the university scene and understand how that system could work for me, but also, trying to connect that with the kind of political positions that I had. I mean, not to date myself, but it's like kind of, before the Bernie Sanders, movement had really like Bernie Sanders is like when I was a senior at university, and like, they didn't really feel like there were so many homes for people who want to kind of make the arguments and to put the ideas out there that we would like to see. So could you talk about like how this project, will be able to kind of meet and help people, who are very talented and skilled, but might not get the opportunity to tell their stories and their perspective without this?
Yeah, and really critically, we are not a chapter program, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel
Hmm.
of YDSA or Sunrise and other youth groups that are more militantly and effectively organizing on campuses. And rather, we want to add a tool in the arsenal of young people who want to organize, and that tool being storytelling and bringing in more people together on your campus, but also outside of your campus. We want effective organizing in Kentucky to spread 3,000 miles away in a corner of Oregon, as well. And so, how can we uh, be how can we support catalyzing chain reactions of effective organizing from campus to campus? And so if you're a student and you're frustrated with your university's contract with Flock, an AI surveillance camera company, if you're a student who's frustrated that grad workers are being union busted and your university is capitulating to Trump, like, we want to support you in telling that story, and inspiring other students on your campus and off campus as well. So, and in addition to inspiring students, we want students to identify themselves as workers if they're working on campus or off campus, as tenants, because this is a really unique situation where your university is also your landlord a lot of the time,
Yeah, yeah.
and also a member of your community too. And we really want to focus on students at community and public colleges, where you're more likely to be from where you're studying. But if there's data center fights happening nearby a university, we see it as very important for students to show up and join forces with other community members who are advocating to stop that AI data center from coming to their town. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question, but I'm really excited about like building student and community ties as well as student to student ties across campuses.
I would just say real quick, like, it feels like you kind of got some wind in your sails at the moment a little bit, and I'm curious where you would assess like your generation to be, because I think there's been a lot of concern. There's a lot of maybe more purchase than my generation had with the right wing. I think like the Turning Point USA experiment was frankly more successful than I expected it would have been in 2016 or whatever. I'm curious, like, but it feels like maybe the mood shifting. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, where do I stand on the right wing's dominance,
Oh,
or
Well, I think Matt just disappeared there, but I think like your generation in terms of politics. I mean, there has been some kind of shifts in like, oh, maybe this next generation won't be as kind of as politically left wing or
um,
radical. Could you just kind of talk about like what people are probably missing about that story?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that for one, Turning Point is only successful because the Democratic Party has failed to actually champion working people, and they created a vacuum that Turning Point and other right wing campus groups filled. And when you actually fill that gap by providing substantive policies and solutions and a vision for a future that involves everyone, and centers working people, then suddenly the right wing groups don't have anything, any vacuum to fill. And so I mean, and then at the same time, Turning Point is floundering for that reason, right? Like they don't have substance, and they don't have the main guy, the charismatic figure anymore to work off of, and to make up for the fact that they don't have substance. And so I truly believe that young people are going to be the tip of the spear in cultivating a future for the many of us, to bring in working class Republicans or apolitical people who thought that, you know, Trump or the right was the solution in build to their problems, and realizing that that isn't the case. And, you know, now they're seeing that, you know, populist movement where, you know, they realize the problem is not a trans person or an immigrant, but a tech billionaire coming into their town, BlackRock coming into their town and jacking up their utility prices. That's the problem. They're going to join forces with students on campuses to build a better future. And yeah, I mean, young people are waking up, and they have been waking up. And there's a reason it's like, what, over 40% of young people are sympathetic to socialism, right? Like we're very aware of the reasons why the economy isn't working for us, and it's because it's rigged. It's not by coincidence. So yeah, and now we just have to channel that energy.
Well, and in just a second, we're going to bring in Meagan Day. But I want to ask you, kind of in closing here, Elise, I'll say this is my perspective, and you can agree or disagree. But there has been a kind of a trend when it comes to the Democratic Party of kind of like plucking up specific young people who hold specific views that maybe aren't the the most popular views, but those get really amplified. One, because of the Democratic Party and people with money might like to hear certain values and perspectives be kind of amplified. Could you talk a little bit about how this project, might be a counterweight to kind of get more, I don't know, let's say authentic voices of working class young folks to be heard in the national discourse?
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to actually represent young people and not force them into a box that works for DC standards. You know, young people are upset that their tax dollars and their politicians are focused squarely on facilitating a genocide, as opposed to championing free college, lowering the cost of rent, and championing social housing and other tenant protections, breaking up big tech, the list goes on. And so we're very focused on actually authentically representing what young people are feeling in this moment, and platforming them and giving them the tools and ability to speak for themselves. And yeah, this is truly undefined by party, and really believing that if we organize by class, that we can actually a secondary purpose, but shift the Democratic Party and shift politics in DC. But the primary goal is not to do that, but to just to show that young people are anti-war, and they're for an economy that works for the 99%, and they're ready to build it. So yeah, I mean, and the more the more that we can build up those student voices, the less relevant the students or young people that have aligned themselves to a politics that actually don't align with young people, the less relevant those people are, which is a nice benefit.
Well, Elisa, let's say I'm a young freshman at the University of Texas, and I'm really excited about what you're saying. How can I get involved and keep up with the work that y'all are doing?
Yeah, thank you for asking. If you're a student, you're pissed off at a world built for the billionaires, you should join our Discord to start. And you can find us at More Perfect University on all social media platforms. And the links in our bios will take you to our Discord. And that's where our storytelling trainings will be, where you'll learn how to tell stories that speak truth to power. But you can also pitch events on your campus, pitch stories to us, and we will help you tell it. And we're really excited for you to join this community.
Well, that is Elise Joshi. Thank you so much for joining us on the Jacobin Show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. See you guys.
See ya. Well, everybody, just a reminder, this is our special Jacobin May Day show, and we are running an incredible deal. It really doesn't get any better than this. $1 subscriptions to the digital magazine, $10 for print subscriptions. You can get that by using the link below in the show notes or putting in the code MAYDAY 2026X. I'm really thrilled to bring in our next guest, one of my favorite people, Meagan Day. Meagan Day is a senior editor here at Jacobin, one of my favorite writers and a friend. Matt, if we could bring Meagan on, I'm really excited to be joined by our friend here. Meagan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Good to see you. Happy May Day.
Happy May Day. Happy May Day Jacobin sale.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, we're moving, folks. And, again, really, I will just say Jacobin has been, I think, not only an incredible resource for the left, but an incredible resource for me. So continue to support the magazine. You'll get a lot for it. The new edition of Teen Jacobin is a lot of fun, including a great interview that Meagan did as well. But Meagan, let's talk a little bit about this piece that you wrote. And people might have seen it on social media as well. Meagan's put together some really great videos on this. The piece in Jacobin is called Why the Rich Should Get Free Public Childcare Too. And maybe to set you up, Meagan, a lot of times when our side pitches programs, universal programs, we are told, hey, that sounds really nice, but I don't want to pay for rich kids' college tuition. I don't want to pay for rich kids' free public childcare. Is that a fair argument?
No, I don't think it's a particularly fair argument. And there's like one basic fact that undercuts it, but then there's this whole other journey that we can go on through many other political chambers. So we should do them both. The first thing is that these programs are funded by progressive taxation, which means that it's not perfect. Obviously, the super rich are making their money through investment, so this doesn't apply to them. But broadly speaking, we do have a progressive tax system where people are at least theoretically supposed to pay higher taxes the higher up the income ladder you go, which means that any program that's funded by taxes is already going to be more substantially funded by the rich than by the poor. So whenever people like Hillary Clinton or Pete Buttigieg or the New York Times critiquing Zohran Mamdani want to throw out this idea of like, oh, so you just want to have giveaways to the rich, they're just eliding that basic fact, the basic fact of our tax structure. Should we increase and improve the mechanisms of progressive taxation in our society? Absolutely. But still, it's the case that a household that's making $250,000 a year is going to be paying more for basic programs than a household that's making a combined $60,000 a year. So that's right off the bat. And then there's, as far as like why they like to pull that one out, I think the reason is because they see it, centrists see this as a politically clever way to hit back at progressives and democratic socialists. It's sort of like a hit 'em where it hurts strategy. It's meant to kind of highlight hypocrisy or ignorance on the part of someone like Zohran Mamdani or Bernie Sanders or whoever's advocating social programs. The idea being like, oh, so you want rich people who can pay for private college or who can pay for private daycare to get access to this thing. Isn't that just a giveaway of money to the rich? Oh, so you're just in favor of throwing money at the rich. And then they sort of sit back smugly and they're like, see what I did there. We could talk about more of the details of precisely what's wrong with the argument, but that's my first shot at it.
Well, I would also add too that I think one thing that you see, I think with this argument, but just the way that a lot of these programs tend to function when you do bifurcate them or if you start means testing them, is the rich people are very happy to kind of politically disinvest in addition to economically disinvest. And, we're seeing this with Texas, unfortunately, with the voucher scam, where, people being able to take money out of the public school system and bring it in the private school system means that there's less buy-in from the wealthy in the community to be worried about, things like lower quality of education, right? Making these things, public goods and something that everybody kind of goes through encourages wealthy people who, even though there's not many of them, they have an outsized influence in our politics. It gives them some skin in the game to make sure that these systems also work as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, the super rich are sending their kids to private schools no matter what. And as long as we have private schools, that's what's going to happen. But there's a pretty big range of incomes and wealth levels in our highly stratified and highly unequal society. So when we start looking at like the middle class and upper middle class, these are not like strict, Marxist terminology. These are folk terminology. But I think we know what we're talking about. Like a lot of those people do send their kids to public schools. And a lot of them do take advantage of other, universal programs that we have. And then even the super rich are going to be taking advantage of things like Social Security and Medicare. Not that they necessarily need them, but they typically do take advantage of them. And these types of programs, because they have buy-in from a larger portion of the population and the most powerful portions of the population, frankly, are less politically vulnerable than means-tested programs. So means-tested programs sound really good in theory because it's like, it's really hard to find money for public programs. So why don't we just earmark it for the people who need it the most? That makes total sense right off the bat. The main flaw with that thinking is that the amount of money that's available for public programs is not like a financial or economic fact, it's a political fact.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're designing programs, we need to be thinking, how can we actually increase the size of the pot of money available for this program by making it politically appealing and politically durable so that our society will want to invest in it. Think about wars, like the war in Iran. Like, the amount of money that's available for war just fluctuates based on political realities. The same is actually true for public programs. We just don't talk about it like that. So when you have means-tested programs that are targeting only low-income people, examples of this are Medicaid and SNAP and Section 8 vouchers. The thing that really happens is that these start to be perceived as like charity, that the rest of society is paying to, to give a handout to poor people who can't help themselves. And most people, by their morals, would very much like to do that. But when the economy contracts and when people start to feel the economic squeeze, which often happens, they will, it happens cyclically under capitalism, then people will be like, well, if it's like a household budget. If we have to cut something, we're going to have to cut charity because it's essentially a voluntarist action that we're taking on to like actualize our morals or whatever. And, that's going to have to go so that we can make ends meet. People will start saying that, and then suddenly you'll have a very vulnerable, politically vulnerable program on your hands. And that's why things like SNAP and Medicaid are always on the chopping block, and why you don't, obviously the right would love to come after Social Security and Medicare, and occasionally like they puff up their chest like they're just about to do it, but it's a lot harder to go after Social Security and Medicare because they're not conceived of as charity. They're sort of just conceived of as like how our system works.
Yeah, it's been shocking to see the attacks on SNAP by this recent administration, but also the lapsing of the anti-poverty measures passed in the early part of the Biden administration. And I feel like that's a similar sort of thing is, it wasn't affecting everybody. It wasn't affecting particularly the class that talks about this politics in the press. And so we let a whole bunch of people sink back into poverty out of after raising them out of it. Where do you think we're at in this logic? Like, do you think people are getting this means testing? Because I've been hearing about this since I was a baby leftist in like Obama administration. Like, means testing is just a dumb way to approach this stuff.
I think most people still instinctively think like we should carve out money for poor people because money is scarce. And that's because most people we're not used to thinking politically in our society. But by which I mean everything is politically fused in the sense of like the psychedelic, discursive cage match that we call politics. Everybody has opinions on that, but people don't sort of systematically think politically because we don't have many venues or forums for democracy, for true democracy. And it's a muscle that you have to exercise. And Americans' muscles are very weak for thinking politically. And so it's very hard for people to like think beyond just the basic like kitchen table math of like, we don't have that much money, and so we should give it to the people who need it. I think most people are there. However, I wrote this article and then I made a video about this article and it went out on social media and it did surprisingly well. And a lot of the responses were people basically being like, I had a hunch about this. Like, I've been looking for the words for this. Like that, a lot of people were having that response where they were like, yes, exactly. That's been on my mind. I just hadn't quite worked it out yet. That like, there's something about means-tested programs that makes them very vulnerable, and something about universal programs that conversely makes them very politically durable, and that therefore we're going to have to make them universal, even if it means letting rich people use them, which, like, frankly, who cares?
Hey, David, you with us?
Yeah, I am. I'm really sorry about that. You guys can hear me all right? Apologies.
Yeah, you're on the wrong mic. So while you fix that, I think, because I think you're coming in through the room thing, I do have Hillary Clinton thing. I think we should
On the
let
line?
her.
You're like, I've got
Yeah, we
Hillary
have
Clinton
her.
on the line here.
Yeah, here she is giving this statement because I think it is just important for people. Because I saw some people saying that's a bad argument. Well, that's true. It was an argument that was made at the highest level of politics only a decade ago.
I'm a little different than those who say free for everybody. I am not in favor of making college free for Donald Trump's kids. I'm in favor of making college free for your grandson by having no debt tuition. And then I do think, because I worked when I went to college, I had a job. I went to law school, I had a job. And I also had loans when I went to law school.
Oh, wow. Great.
Right.
And you're back, David.
All right, great. Yeah, no, I mean, pretty incredible there, right? There is something that is just so condescending about figures like that, by the way, talking about, their college experience and how that kind of gives them a buy-in to like everyday working class people.
Wasn't she with Bill at Oxford? Anyway,
so,
I have to look that up. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this argument gets made a lot more than you think. Basically, the reason that centrist Democrats prefer means testing is that you can actually save money in the short term, which allows them to lower taxes on their donor base. So they would prefer means tested programs and various means tested. Okay, so the right would prefer like outright austerity, like nothing, and deregulation, and just like a gladiatorial market based hyper commodified society, and they're pretty open about that. Democrats are different. They would also prefer to allow market logics to prevail for a variety of reasons, but they also don't want to look like they're doing that, right? This is the frustration that we have with the Democratic Party. So means testing is perfect because then you get to say like, we're actually looking out for the poorest people the most. We're the people who care the most about the poor people. But those programs are, well, there's an argument about whether or not they're actually cheaper or more expensive, but they at least allow you to like, they're cheaper in some sense than like the big universal programs, right? Because you're just targeting a smaller portion of the population. Side note, it's actually really expensive to keep the bureaucracy going that like tests people for eligibility. So that's just another expense that's thrown in there. But overall, it is more expensive for rich people in a progressive taxation system to be paying into like a universal program, right? It's just that they'll also get to pay out. Point being that Democrats prefer means tested programs because it allows them to speak out of both sides of their mouth a little bit. But then they have to figure out a way to justify that. And they typically resort to arguments like these about how they're actually looking out for the little guy and not interested in a giveaway to Donald Trump and his kids. But we owe it to ourselves to be able to think through this, because even in our culture today, the most durable political program or the most durable social programs that we have are the universal social programs. And we don't even think about them as such. Imagine means testing the post office. It seems sort of unimaginable, because the post office in our minds is just like a thing that we gave ourselves because we wanted to live in a civilized society. Not that, and that's functionally, and it's not something that you should be paying for private mail unless you can't. And then we have like a poor people's mail for you, but we might wipe it out if we want to. And then you won't be able to fight back because you're the most vulnerable portion of society.
Yeah, I mean, could you talk a little bit more about how this makes things more expensive? I mean, you see this not just with like means testing, but also, one of the reasons healthcare in this country is so expensive is you have all these administrators trying to work through an extremely complicated system that would run so much more efficiently and be significantly cheaper, if we just had a universal healthcare system.
Okay, this is a little bit complicated because like it's not like universal programs are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
They are expensive. It's just that they are a really, really good investment because everybody gets to benefit from them, and they transform society and tend to solve a lot of social problems. And then they cut a lot of other costs down the line for that reason. And the thing about means testing is that it can be cheap on paper, like when you first look at it, when you get the first receipt, but there are lots of costs that don't benefit society. So for example, if you have a universal program like universal healthcare, then you're saving lots of people lots of other costs, because the types of things that they have to do to keep afloat in this system of privatized health insurance is just like costly for society, broadly speaking. including, for example, not going to the doctor their whole lives and then getting on Medicare and then going to the doctor and then actually getting paid for by our system, right? That's an example. Universal programs will sort of like, you have to pay a lot up front and you get a little bit of like a sticker shock, but you also just like resolve some serious problems. And then you stabilize society in some ways where you're resolving like really downstream problems, like crime, for example, is something that we can imagine being resolved by having really robust universal social programs that stabilize people's lives and effect a kind of profound transformation in the way that they relate to their neighbors and to the environment around them, right? As for the costs built into means testing, one, they displace costs down the line by just being messy and constantly getting axed and so on and so forth. And two, they're really expensive to actually, like I was saying a moment ago, like they create these bureaucracies or mazes of red tape, and then those are actually really expensive to keep up because now you have a whole new class of bureaucracy or a class of administrators, the only purpose of which is to review applications to see if people actually are poor enough to qualify for these things. That creates a couple of problems, one of which is that there's like a magical cutoff line that doesn't seem to map onto reality. If you're making $10,000 over that cutoff line, the idea that you wouldn't benefit from enormously from that program, and we all know that just being $5,000 over that line can be like dooming you, right? And then another thing is that like a lot of times people just can't, for whatever reason, get it together to demonstrate eligibility. It's really complicated. Sometimes they miss deadlines because they're just normal people like the rest of us, and we all miss deadlines or fill out forms wrong, or things get lost in the mail, or we were busy that week with the kids, and then people get kicked off the rolls. And sometimes this is actually by design, and you see in red states that there have been pretty demonstrable efforts to make means tested programs be more complicated on purpose to sort of prune the rolls to save the state money, meaning to save the state's rich and donor class money.
Well, I mean, I just want to jump in here. Like, I've seen this. I know somebody who's a nurse at a hospital that takes a large amount of people from shelters. And this woman had a daughter who had some asthma issues. It's about as horrible type of issues as you can have. And she was afraid, even though she probably had some sort of government insurance to check. I mean, this was mainly ICE related. But to back out, like, those people should just be covered because you're not doing anybody any good leaving a child out there having difficulty breathing, or people not getting access to like a vaccine to a disease that's killing people. It's what they call it, penny wise and pound foolish. That like people should be taken care of, and we're paying for it in the long run by letting this sort of stuff fester.
Also, like, not even just from like a moral or even socialist perspective. I like penny wise and pound foolish. I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say with some of this stuff. But there's also the case that, I mean, that anyone can agree with, which is that if you have a child with untreated asthma symptoms, you also have an impoverished and time poor parent who could otherwise be a productive and contributing member of society, but you've robbed their ability to do that. So I'm saying that even if you have like some sort of, if you have a conservative mentality, I can't imagine that you would actually want this. The conservative mentality holds space for like wanting people to be productive and integrated members of society, right? But we just further and further fracture our society with means tested programs and overly gate kept programs and programs that are bound up in red tape that just generate more problems than they solve, which seem to exist primarily for the purpose of Democrats being able to say that they are in favor of something good, a little something good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean it's an argument that doesn't really make much sense from the logistical side, and I think it's just kind of based on maybe some of the rhetoric around we're managing these programs in an efficient way and making sure that rich people aren't living high on the hog. Meagan, before we let you go though, Matt, if we could maybe grab this Sean Fain clip here about the work week, because Meagan is everywhere, and I always appreciate seeing Meagan's work in many different platforms, including obviously Jacobin. But Meagan has been a longtime advocate for free time and like a really nice fulfilled life, and it's something I really appreciate about your writing, your work, Meagan. I think it's May Day. This is something that I think was a very strong part of the labor demands for a long time in this country, and I think this clip here, if we have it, Matt, of Sean Fain, kind of notes something that we should kind of restore.
We have a mental health crisis we talk about a lot in this country, but we never talk about the causes of that. There's been studies done, increases in stress from working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you're sacrificing family life, things you want to pursue. It causes an increase in cortisol levels, which lead to heart disease, cancer, strokes. But given all those facts, if someone is lucky enough to get to retire, typically when they've worked themselves to death their entire life, they face knee replacements, hip replacements, shoulder surgeries, and the rest of their lives figuring out how they're going to survive. So, it's sad to say that in 1933, the U.S. Senate passed legislation to establish a 30-hour work week, but due to intense corporate opposition, that legislation failed. But in 1940, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, establishing a 40-hour work week. 84 years ago, the 40-hour week was established. And since then, we've had a 400% increase in productivity, but nothing's changed.
I mean, yeah, I think it's an important argument here. And this used to be a very large part of the demand for the labor movement, which obviously higher wages, but also more leisure time. I mean, in the last couple of minutes, Meagan, I mean, could you kind of, round out this pitch for us about why this is such an important demand and something that we should definitely be fighting for today?
I think in general, if we can claw back some of our time, as much of our time as possible, while being able to maintain a productive and functioning economy, then we should do that. I honestly believe that we should try to find the limit, because that would be to humanize ourselves and sort of transform ourselves back into humans from being commodified labor sources. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple things to say. One, whenever I would see sometimes my wife working overtime without pay, I would just gently remind her that people died for her to not do that. It's like a lot of, we just, some of the norms have sort of, the norms around this have eroded a little bit, a lot. Why am I saying a little bit? A lot. I think that the United States never came anywhere close to what we would call socialism, but due to the tireless efforts largely of socialists, trade unionists, progressives, and so on, we did build a very sophisticated architecture of worker protections, starting with the 19th century rise of the American labor movement and intensifying in the New Deal era and sort of peaking in the 1950s, roughly at the height of American unionism, where people worked significantly fewer hours and the economy hummed along just fine. Those have been unraveled, as we know, due to the many processes of neoliberalism beginning in earnest in the 1970s. And we're like lobsters in a boiling pot. I don't think it's very easy for us to actually even see how abnormal our situation is from the perspective of people who were living at the height of the American worker protections regime in the middle of the 20th century, for whom it would have been a very serious thing to contravene the 40-hour work week. That was much more sacrosanct to people than it is to us now. What were you going to say, David? I saw you gearing up.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm becoming such a sap these days, but I think that what you're getting at is really important. I mean, both with free time from work, but also, being able to engage fully in social life. I think one of the real crises that we're experiencing in this country right now in the society is the fact that most people, they don't feel like they're in control of their life. They don't feel like they have a lot of fulfillment in their private life. And a big part of that is the fact that you're at work all the time. And then two, I think a lot of the ways that our economy is being set up purposefully is set up that even your leisure is kind of alone and commodified. I mean, social media and all these things, are really nice in a lot of ways. Is how I'm able to meet people from all across the country and the world. But it also does mean that people are spending a lot of time at home and fulfilling that kind of desire and need, that human aspect of our life for sociability. And we're kind of engaging with it at home in a way that I think is probably responsible for a lot of the kind of mental health crises and just pain and suffering that people are experiencing right now.
Well, I feel that the left has gotten, I think probably correctly, away from a kind of like consumerist mentality. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was a kind of 90s like lifestyle politics of like, don't be a little capitalist piggy, like shop till you drop or whatever. And it didn't produce a very fruitful politics because it sort of separated out the kind of like moral, righteous, austere leftists, you know, the vegans and so on from the normal, like, you know, like overstuffed, like TV watching, like working class shoppers, you know, Black Friday, whatever. That was not a very good dichotomy. At the same time, lately I've been thinking like I want to reintroduce a certain critique of consumerism, because when we sit at home and we're scrolling, typically we're actually just like engaging in a mental lifestyle creep. It's like we stopped working only to get on our phones and start looking at all of the stuff that could make our lives better, would make us feel like we had made it, right? And those things require money. And so that's why we have to go to work. If you do that all weekend, you've just given yourself 10 more reasons to go work even harder the next week, because now you have to buy wainscoting for your walls or whatever. Personal example from my life. Like I think, you know, I do want to, I want to advocate in some way. I don't want to advocate a return to that kind of 90s style, like lifestyle, anti-consumer politics, ad busters, whatever. But I have been thinking lately about how necessary it is in some ways for socialists to put forward an idea of like an economy run really on the basis of need, not on profit. Like what jobs should exist in society? Jobs should solve problems. We should have a list of problems, just ongoing problems, pressing, urgent problems, ongoing problems, just a list of things that need to be solved. And every problem is a job, and that we should assign jobs on that basis. So that would be like, well, in the consumer world, that would be like toothpaste. We need toothpaste. That's a problem that we have to solve. So now we have to have a toothpaste factory, and we have to have people to sell toothpaste. So those are jobs that would exist under socialism. But we have such a proliferation of products and jobs and nonsense, the purpose of which cannot actually be explained by need or like reasonable problems that we would like to solve. It can only be explained by the fact that somebody wanted to profit. They had the means of production available to make the thing and to hire the people, and now everybody's scrambling for it, to buy it, which keeps that particular economy afloat. So I am lately a little bit more in favor of like a kind of paring back approach to the idea of what jobs even need to exist in society. I would much rather people have fewer of these, what David Graeber would call bullshit jobs, and much more time devoted to the people that we love and the hobbies that we enjoy and the earth that we share and so on.
Yeah, and I think this was a very large. I mean, there's always been part of the socialist movement that has, advocated, for a better life for folks, and that, oftentimes in a country that has extreme poverty does mean putting more money in people's pockets. But I also think that it's important to understand all of the other aspects of what makes a good life, and I don't know, to not be so timid about it. I catch myself being hesitant, talking about this kind of thing sometimes, just because I feel like it comes off as sappy or too idealistic or something like that. But I think that we are really in a crisis in many ways, and our political movements certainly should be promising not just like an end to suffering and inconvenience and pain, but also like a nice life and a meaningful life.
I think we're daydreaming about possible lives. The scrolling activities that we as I think probably 3 millennials, Gen Z, I don't know. Everyone here a millennial?
Yeah.
I think those activities are daydreaming about life being nicer, aren't they? I mean, that's typically what it is. Like that's what you're doing, is you're engaging in a kind of like assisted maladaptive daydreaming about a future that's better than the present. And to the extent that people do that, I think that our job is to try to get people to daydream politically, not to daydream in terms of consumption and like individual status upgrades through commodities, through commodity possession. But to daydream about, like, to daydream, that's what the purpose of Jacobin is to catch you while you're scrolling and get you to daydream differently, right? To daydream about a better future, but that isn't sort of defined by, like, again, to use personal examples, very beautiful paint colors that are out there. Many, the endless options for paint colors, which I need to study in detail, apparently, all weekend long.
Well, Meagan Day is the senior editor at Jacobin, a good friend and somebody whose work I respect very much. Thank you for spending a little bit of your May Day with us here at the Jacobin Show, Meagan.
Thanks, guys. Happy May Day.
Happy May Day. See you soon.
See you, Meagan.
Well, folks, this has been so much fun.
Oops.
Joining and being in the chat. Oh, am I okay?
I accidentally moved you instead of.
Sorry. Really appreciate everybody joining us and hang out with us on this May Day. We got just a couple minutes before we run, Matt. I think we have a couple of clips we could maybe play. If anyone has any last minute questions, something you're itching to get on the Jacobin Show, put it in. Unfortunately, Michael Burns had a pretty significant tech issue and wasn't able to join us live today, but we will certainly have him on the program. People should check out his YouTube channel as well. While Matt's getting this clip ready for us, I do want to remind everybody.
Sorry, which clip, David? Just real quick.
Your dealer's choice, my friend. We can maybe talk a little bit about the Hassan freak out and clothes, maybe if you're looking for something. But we are running this incredible deal here at Jacobin. Our May Day special, $1 digital subscriptions, $10 print subscriptions. You get that by using code Mayday 2026X. It is an incredible magazine. It has brought so many people together. It has influenced the world, literally, as we see this democratic socialist movement continue to grow. And you can be a part of it by supporting it. You not only get all the new stuff that's coming out, but you get access to the incredible archives. I was actually just flipping through one of the older editions on the kind of radical potential of the Civil War, something that I think we could all use a little bit of a revival of. But before we go, and unless anybody has any questions, I wanted to talk a little bit about this Hassan thing. We've interviewed Hassan on this program. Matt and I have done some stuff with Hassan in the past. Respect his work immensely. It has been an interesting turn of events, though, over the past few weeks, where it seems the entire media is obsessed with one question only: whether or not Democratic Party politicians should be speaking with Hassan. People wouldn't be surprised by my answer to that. They should, because he represents, I think, a growing and important segment of American society and of American politics. But I think what they really fear is somebody like that who kind of is bucking the stereotypes and the attacks that we often get on people who share our politics. And I think that whether or not you're a big Hassan head, I would suggest that you become one. But even if you're not particularly interested in his program, this is an attack on all of us, because what they're trying to do right now is to shut out this kind of discourse from the national conversation, because they are afraid of what has been happening as more and more people are resonating with these kind of ideas about democratic socialism, about a fight against genocide, anti-war positions, about human dignity, basically. And they want to shut those things out as part of, quote, polite conversation. And we shouldn't allow them to get away with that. Which is why, even though some people might be a little tired of talking about this, and I get it, it's really important actually that we kind of speak with one voice against this, sorry to use the term, cancellation project that we're seeing. But let's play this clip here, man, if you can set it up for us.
2 clips here. This is a compilation made by, I think, Hasanabi Productions here, just of Fox News's coverage alone of our boy Hassan.
Hassan Piker.
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 Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker.
Hassan Piker.
Hassan Piker.
Hassan Piker.
Pretty good at it there.
That is one of those things where it's like a word stops being legible as like having meaning when you hear it so much. But here is Hassan at a event for Chris Rabb, who is a candidate in Pennsylvania's 3rd district. Really, really great candidate. We had him on Majority Report recently, which was really great. But here's Hassan. He's in Philly to promote Rabb. Oops, I froze for a second. Give me 1 second. And I just wanted to share this link here. I got it. 1 second. Open this. I have to watch from here because I can't find it. Here it is. Sorry, just one.
Yeah, no, why don't you take that? Again, you can get $1 digital subscriptions and print subscriptions by using Mayday 2026X at Jacobin to subscribe to Jacobin Magazine. Do you think we'll be able to get it?
Yep, got it right here. Here's Hassan in Philly.
If you're mad that there's never enough money for healthcare in this country, but unlimited funds to bomb other countries, well, you have an opportunity to make that change. You have an opportunity to let your voice be heard. For far too long, people have been told, myself included, that we have to vote for harm reduction. We have to vote because we have to vote against the Republican Party. We all know the Republican Party is bad. But you now have an opportunity to vote for something. And not just Chris, but you have an opportunity to vote for Medicare for all, knowing full well that he's going to fight that battle for you. You have an opportunity to vote for a jobs guarantee, endless militarism, ending the endless militarism, to make sure that every single dollar that we spend on new ways to murder children overseas can be spent here taking care of our children, taking care of your family members, to make sure that instead of spending all that money blowing up schools overseas, we spend that money on building schools right here. And this is a universal value that many of you share, and that's precisely the reason why the vote that you cast is not just for Philadelphia, it's not just for Pennsylvania, it's not just for even places like myself in Los Angeles, California, it's for people overseas as well. It's for everybody else.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason why people are trying to shut down that message.
And I think Micah brought this up, but the idea that Hassan just hates Democrats and wants to see them fail is actually not what they have a problem with. The problem is he lifts up the ones that they don't want to see lifted up. And because I'll tell you what, Dave and I have first-hand experience. When politicians hear that Hassan is around and they might have a chance to appear on
yeah, they get very excited.
They aren't like, oh no, that guy's gonna be bad for us. They're like, can we get on? All of our staffers think we should definitely do this at whatever the cost.
Yes, exactly. Well, friends, that is going to be it for us this May Day. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Just a reminder that in addition to the magazine, you can get my book, The Myth of Red Texas, at OR Books, which is doing a 50% off sale just through the weekend. I'm going to be here in Austin at Alienated Majesty May 7th at 6 Central with Justin Miller, Texas Observer. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. It's going to be packed, so get there early, grab your book, and don't forget to subscribe to the magazine, Mayday 2026X. To get $1 digital subscriptions and $10 print subscriptions. It is a hell of a value. You're only going to get this opportunity once a year.
Absolutely.
All right, and let's play out our beautiful music by our good friend Zonky to send us off for the weekend. And I hope that y'all have a wonderful one. And we will see you very soon here on The Jacobin Show.